Okay, today's project. My wife's 2010 Subaru Legacy lost its drive belt recently. You can see there's the shredded old belt, and the reason it failed was that the idler pulley bearings had failed and basically locked it up and tore everything up. I went ahead and ordered a replacement belt and idler pulley before I took it apart, but now that I have it apart, you can see where the idler pulley mounts to it's actually the air conditioning compressor holding bracket, and so looks like I need more parts. So what I've done is went ahead and ordered a new AC compressor bracket and the bolt that holds the idler pulley in place. I ended up ordering those directly from Subaru, so I'll pick those up at the dealership whenever they come in, hopefully soon. And with that said, I got to do a little prep work just so I'm ready when it comes. It appears that the order of disassembly will be to first get the alternator off the bracket and then remove the bolts from the AC compressor to expose the bracket that will be replaced. So I'll tackle it in that order, I believe, and we'll see how it goes from there. Okay, I've got the electrical connections from this harness right here that go, there's two connections on the AC compressor and two connections on the alternator. Pretty straightforward on all of them except this one here on top of the compressor. I had a hard time getting this off of there. Ended up using a screwdriver to help kind of lift up the underside of it as I pushed down on top and finally got it to come loose. So that one was a pain, but the rest of them were pretty easy. So next I'm going to remove this bracket that holds that harness and just kind of set it off the side. I don't think I'll have to remove the wiring from the harness rack itself to do this job. We'll see. Okay, the bolts for this here harness bracket that goes between the alternator and the AC compressor. The bolt on this end is a 12 millimeter, requires 12 millimeter socket. See the size of it? And the one on this side is much smaller and just used a 10 millimeter socket. So you shouldn't be able to get those two confused when this goes back on. Okay, quick comment on the lower bolt for the alternator removal, which is the one way down in there. It also used a 12 millimeter socket, and I had to use a little extension to get into it. And to differentiate it from this other bracket bolt, this one, while still 12 millimeters, is a shorter bolt than the one that goes up here. And finally, I believe is the last bracket bolt for this alternator. Again, using the 12 millimeter socket with a little extension, and on the back it seems to have this kind of built-in nut that's free floating but part of a different piece. So you can see I started removing it and the nut's attached to that little piece that it's with, so I'll have to be careful to catch that as I remove it, and will be interesting to try to get that back in after the fact. That long bolt on the bottom right side or bottom driver's side of the alternator. This is that funky nut I was telling you about that's at the end of here alternator. In there a little tight even with all the bolts removed, so I found this here pry bar, and it seems like that's gonna work. I'm just kind of rotating it out of there kind of clockwise, I guess, and I think we'll have it for you in a second. So with the wiring harness out of the way and the alternator removed, we can now start getting this bracket off of the air compressor and off the engine so that we can replace it. Looks like the bolts to be removed. There's two bolts here on going into the top of the engine, one down below, there it is, and then one in the back, which I think are the four that would be needed to release the bracket and compressor from the engine itself. And then to remove the air compressor or AC compressor from the bracket, there's some bolts here on the back and down below. One of them's tucked away in the corner there. You can kind of see that I won't be able to get a wrench to until I have it removed from the engine and can swing it out a little bit to get access to that bolt. So that's the plan. We'll take that out and check back in if I get that far. Quick check-in. I've got the 4 bolts removed that hold this AC bracket to the engine. All 4 bolts appear to be the same length. They all have the number 8 on the back, so interchangeable from that standpoint. And again, they came from those 2 locations, the one at the lower side and this one spot in the back where you can see that bolt is missing. I did have to use a bit of a longer extension to get to that last one I pointed out, but in any case, those are all removed now, which makes this compressor movable, so now I can get access to the bolts in the back. So we'll do that next. All right, we now have the bracket removed. You see it's been removed from the AC compressor. The 4 bolts I left in place, 2 on the bottom are holding in the back part of the bracket, and the one on the top in the back is holding together a little bracket for that clip for the wiring harness. So I just kind of left it all where it's at. We should be able to strap the new bracket on here as soon as we get that from the Subaru dealer. Quick shout out to our local Subaru dealer, Gilman Subaru, up there southwest of Houston. They were able to get the parts I needed next business day, so I think that's more than acceptable. You can see the busted one on the left here and the nice new shiny one on the right. Still made of aluminum, so we won't torque it down too hard, but it's ready to go on. Let's do it. Looks pretty good. There's the new bracket in place, mounted first to the air compressor, or the AC compressor I should say, with the 4 bolts on the back, and then now the 4 14mm engine bolts are installed. And again, since it's aluminum, I didn't go to any specific torque spec, but I went to finger tight and then just snugged it up a little bit from there. Don't want to go crazy on the aluminum. So next up, let's get that alternator back in. Alternator back in place. And as a reminder, we had 3 bolts, this long one down the driver's side, lower side, that goes into that little plate with the nut on it. So you thread that through first and get that started. And then there's enough play in that to where you can wiggle it around and get the other 2 bolts in. This one on top isn't going to be tightened right away because that's going to hold down the wiring harness here in a second. So it's only there for alignment purposes, and then you can see the other bolt back in there. And these are all, again, 12mm socket use. That one needs a little extension. So we'll tighten this baby down and we'll get back to the electrical harness. Okay, we got the wiring harness back in place. Quick reminder, got that bolt right there on this end of the harness bracket. That's a 12mm. Got the little guy over here by that mounts directly into the AC compressor bracket. That's a 10mm. And then you've got the 2 wiring connections on the alternator. One requires a lock washer and nut. The other one just clips in. And then 2 on the AC compressor, that little guy there and that little guy there. And it goes, all go back in a lot easier than they came out. The idler pulley just sits on that AC compressor bracket easily. Bolt threads in through the front of it like you see. Not anything exciting there. I guess point on torque is not to torque it down to where it compresses the bearings so it spins freely. So you want kind of snug but free rolling, if you know what I mean. The idler pulley is snugged in there nicely, not too firm, was free spinning nicely. I spent a good 15 minutes probably fighting the serpentine belt to get that lined up. Of course, this is the tensioner pulley. You rotate that clockwise to take the to give it some slack so you can pull it over the alternator. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward, I believe. So I think I've got all the belt all in the grooves properly and serpentined around the pulleys in the right direction. So about all there is left to do at this point is I'll put the cover back over all that and find the keys. We'll fire this thing up, make sure she's good to go. All right, she's all fired up. Either pulley sounds quiet. Belt seems to be in place okay. So I think we're good to go. I'll take her for a spin around the block. And hey, if this was helpful or you liked it or whatever, it's my first YouTube video, so give it a thumbs up. And we'll see if I can get some more stuff out there that's helpful.